On October 8, 2021, I made one of my largest consumer tech purchases, which was the MacBook Pro 16-inch M1 Max. And at that time, I had a lot of questions in my mind. Is this the right device for me? Am I wasting my money or making a mistake? Is the 16-inch way too big, and is the M1 Max overkill? And finally, does it still make sense to buy one in 2022? The MacBook Pro has been through a lot since its inception, and for a period there, we had some tough times. We had the butterfly switch issues, we had the removal of all I/O, basically in favor of USB-C ports only, and the most beloved of them all, the Touch Bar. But needless to say, I'm glad Apple went back to the basics. That being said, I want to talk to you guys about my long-term experience using this beautiful, beautiful machine. Firstly, I want to talk about the chassis. I know it's a subjective matter and quite a few people don't like it, but I love this body style. It reminds me of the old PowerBooks, and I'm glad that they actually decided to go with function over form here. By doing so, by going with this thicker body, Apple was able to fit more things into this, including the ports that we knew and loved. More on that in a second. And for the 16-inch, honestly, it does not feel unwieldy to me at all. In fact, I got used to the size like right away, and anything smaller actually felt too small to me. Like in Final Cut Pro, when I'm editing video, having like the color grades and the scopes and vectors and everything open and just having so much more real estate, I'm just able to fit a lot more on the screen, and I don't think I can go back from that. And in terms of size, I've taken this laptop on commutes where I've even like worked on a bus, I've traveled with it, taken it on a plane. It fits my smaller camera bags, it fits my everyday carry bags, and personally, it's never really been a hindrance for me. So overall, I love the chunky body. It inspires more confidence with its like square shape, and no doubt it is quite tanky. It's heavy, coming in at about 4.8 pounds. But hey, it's a pro laptop. It's not meant to be one of those super skinny, light, on-the-go laptops that you can't even open the lid with one hand. Next, I want to talk about the return of the ports. The return of the ports is comparable to Michael Scott's return in the final season 9 of The Office. Unexpected, but much appreciated. As soon as I saw these ports, I literally dumped all of my dongles, like all of them. So, Magsafe Charging, not only has it been missed from a safety standpoint, it's super satisfying and it meets the fidgetability test. The keyboard is great. I love the travel distance on these switches. Touch ID is super convenient for Apple Pay and all things alike. The mics on it are oh so good in a pinch. The webcam works well, and the speakers, chef's kiss. And don't even get me started on this screen. Guys, this thing is absolutely gorgeous. Hands down, the best screen I've used to date. Only other product in like this prosumer price range is the iPad Pro, which kind of makes these two such a great pair. The Liquid Retina XDR display with ProMotion is an absolute treat to use. As for the notch, yeah, it's not your fault that you don't like it. I know it's not appealing, but hey, at least the system does a decent job at hiding it throughout when you're using the computer. Next, I want to talk about the power and performance of this and specs and stuff like that. Now, you can always make the argument that you don't need this much power with the M1 Max chip that I went with. And I completely get it, because if you watch my review on the M1 MacBook Air, you saw that I was able to in fact run this entire YouTube channel on that laptop on the fanless MacBook Air with the base M1 chip for like 2 to 3 months. I mean, that's incredible, and it really says a lot about Apple's technology behind this M1 chip. So if you're working with a tight budget, or your work doesn't really require you to opt for something this powerful, by all means, get the cheaper MacBooks. They work great. As for me, I opted for the M1 Max with the 64 GB unified memory and 4 terabytes of space. And honestly, I have zero regrets.
That's my credo, no regrets.
Look, I know this laptop seems overkill, especially the full-out maxed M1 Max, right? But I usually end up getting just about enough power that I need, sometimes a little bit more. But sometimes, you know what?
I am a peacock! You gotta let me fly!
The thing is, for me, I wanted to be able to future-proof myself. If I ever wanted to dabble into like 8K raw footage or Blender, or I just want to get my creativity to play around with different things or applications, I know that I can do it, and I know this laptop can handle it. And also, every minute matters. Not because I'll maximize that minute for productivity, because let's face it, I'm not productive at all. I actually really suck at it. It's just that it's one less minute that I can potentially get distracted. Like, I'm horrible at getting distracted. So the lesser amount of time that I'm getting beach balls or waiting for things to render, the more effective and efficient I can essentially be. When I don't spend time waiting, I can keep the juices flowing, and the computer is able to keep up with the speed that my mind is processing things, and I'm not able to, get distracted as easily. Not being limited by hardware feels absolutely amazing. Okay, next I want to talk about what makes this laptop special, because look, let's face it, you can spec out many desktops or even laptops to have this kind of power. But what makes this thing so special is the fact that I can literally run this on full throttle and get the full performance it's meant to deliver, all on battery life. Like, I'll have this thing running on full throttle, max brightness, while I'm sitting outside, and I'm able to edit an entire video just on battery life. That for me has been a game changer. And secondly, many powerful laptops, when you unplug the power cable, it gets throttled. And on top of that, if you're editing or doing any heavy work, it's gonna burn through that battery. This thing, no throttle whatsoever, even when you unplug the power cord. So this combination of performance and battery life is what makes this thing an absolute beast, in my opinion. And you know what the kicker is? It's pin drop silent throughout. It's literally the best laptop I've ever used. Now look, the M2 chip is already here. So I know with this laptop, with the M1 Pro, M1 Max, you're probably thinking, does this still make sense to pick up in 2022? In my opinion, if you need the max amount of power you can get out of a MacBook Pro, then yes, 100%. Just comparing the M1 Max to the M2 chip, the M1 Max is still much faster than the regular M2 chip. The CPU, the GPU performance, as well as the memory bandwidth will all be greater than the newly released M2 chip. Not to mention the bigger 16-inch full liquid retina XDR display with 120Hz ProMotion just makes me want to lick it. And a fan to help with sustained performance over time. There's literally nothing else like this on the market right now. Now, if you want to know if this is the right laptop for you, then you got to ask yourself the question, do you need that much power in the first place? If you are a creative in the industry and you're making money off of this, then I sincerely believe that it's going to pay itself off over time. It's going to be an amazing tool to help you get the job done faster, quicker, more efficiently, and with much less stress. But look, if you don't need this kind of power, which is probably majority of the people, the M2 MacBook Air is probably going to be perfectly fine for everything you're gonna need to do. Let's say you need the 16-inch and you're worried about, Apple launching an M2 Pro or M2 Max chip anytime soon. I mean, yeah, that could always happen, but based on Apple's launch pattern, I mean, looking at what they did with the M1 chip, they launched the M1 chip in November of 2022 with the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, as well as the Mac Mini, which is kind of similar to what they just did right now with the M2 chip. And then in October 2021, so a full year later, Apple then launched its M1 Pro and M1 Max chips. So I'm anticipating more likely that we're gonna see this in Q4 of 2023, so next year. But yeah, I could be completely wrong, so DYOR. All in all, I've thoroughly enjoyed this laptop, whether I'm using this at home, whether I'm using this outside at the coffee shop or in the studio, docked to my Apple Studio display. In any scenario, this thing has been an absolute pleasure to use. And yes, I know this is an expensive laptop, but that's also because it is, in my opinion, the perfect laptop right now. In any case, thank you so much for watching. If you guys are curious about like the perfect iPad or the ultimate iPad and when Apple's gonna come out with it, then check out my video on the ultimate iPad and Apple's big secret. I'm gonna have that linked right here. And on that note, I will see you guys on the next video. Take care, stay blessed. Peace.